It is not Workers' Day yet. Past and present lawmakers in Bayelsa State may get life pensions despite the outrage that is going to cause. The Director General of Media and Publicity to Governor of Kogi State says the governor is the landlord of Kogi State. Anyone coming in is a tenant. Are the civil servants in the state happy? This is Plus Politics. I am Felicity Ezewike. The House of Assembly had triggered anger last week, Wednesday, when it hurriedly passed the bill sponsored by the leader of the House. The bill approved 500,000 naira post-service monthly pension to a Speaker of the Assembly, while a Deputy Speaker will receive 200,000 naira and a member will get 100,000 naira. Well, to discuss this, I have with me Adeni Kunu, a political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, a legal practitioner, Jide Ologun. Thank you very much for coming in.
Good evening. Thank you, too.
Let me start with you. What is your immediate reaction to this bill that the House has passed?
Yeah, I was happy that at least they are apprehensive of the external community away from the House of Assembly, because the reason given for this move is to prevent them from the shock of the harsh economy out of office. And quite unfortunately, they may not survive even with this pension if attention is not given to the economy, because they have several issues that they could have used the machinery of law making and law enforcement and representing the people to attend to. For example, we have the issue of crime that we have in our society. So, in fact, the fact that some criminals know that you are coming home with these pensions, you are already endangered. I know that in Bayelsa State, for instance, the Universal Basic Education Commission reported that we have many children that don't have access to education. We know the state of affairs. And now those who are supposed to make life meaningful for their people are now thinking about themselves, knowing that this is estimated to cost about 20 million naira of taxpayers' money on a monthly basis. And these are states that will be quick to tell us they are poor. So you wonder, they find money to fuel their personal security at the expense of securing the people. And I think that is quite disturbing. And if you look at the provisions of the law, they are expected to operate in a way that we don't have conflict of interest. If you look at the United Nations Convention, Article 8 in particular, they are expected to manage the resources in a way that is transparent, that gives room for prudence and productivity.
We'll come to some of the legalities later, but I'd like to take you up on something, tread on what he said earlier about the reasons given for this bill that provides financial succor, so to speak, for the lawmakers when they leave office. And one of them is to give them some financial security from economic uncertainties in the future. Is this reasonable enough reason? If you remember that there are some heroes of this country that has had, poor luck. The most recent was the footballer Christian Chiku, who is asking for help to go treat himself medically. So taking that into consideration, do you think that this is reasonable enough reason for them to seek this bill?
It's actually anti-clockwise legislation. Because, as Jide Ologun mentioned, the state of education in Bayelsa is very unsavory. My mother's last child served there. I have another family friend who served there, and they actually taught. And the report I got from these people really is indicative of the need to look in another direction rather than enrich oneself. It is also true, if I have to be fair in my analysis, that some of the leaders that have served in respective capacities in governance really don't turn out well in their old age. It has to be said that it is also a systemic failure that has brought them to their knees, because ordinarily, if people serve their countries honorably, there's a place of reputation and care for them after they've left office. So if we look at the bigger picture, that's the failure of the Nigerian state. And if you also understand that the likes of Pa Akikumi, who designed the flag, although he won £100 as of when he designed it, he lived in penury until he was rescued by the Lagos State government. So we do not have a culture of proper reward system. My father worked with government, and even after he died, the government of this country, as well as my mother, are actually their debtors, I must say that. So when a system doesn't really find a way to reward its own, particularly when they've worked very hard, then you find out that they devise 1, 2, 3 other ways of helping themselves, because there is amnesia in service duly performed in this country.
Well, isn't that going to be counterproductive? Because, to be frank about this, we have a lot of public servants who serve in various capacities, not just governors, not just lawmakers. We have people who are career workers, politicians and career workers in the civil service in this country. What about those who are not public servants, but they have served the country in other categories? Can the country carry all of this burden and still survive economically?
That's why they tell you that there's a pension scheme for you if you're actually employed by government, where you work for 35 years or you get to 60. And if you're at the university, at least you get to 70.
Yeah, but you contribute towards this in your lifetime as you work.
They pay you salaries over many years. And there are also certain benefits that come. Training allowances come, outside the country. They also give you certain amounts that increase with your stay in office. If we did a comparison, if we were to look at it dispassionately, would say that the reason those who perhaps are employed by government directly and serve for 35 years don't get such benefits is because of the cumulative benefits that come to them whilst they were in office. But that said, doesn't now mean that everybody has to create room. The point is, at times when you feel that there is a need for something, we have every coin with two sides. You always look at the flip of the coin. Education is key. Healthcare is key. And I have to say this, that providing infrastructure in aquatic environment or an area where you have more of water is really expensive. So that money may really have helped people to actually put their lives in order rather than some persons do that. Or again, there could be one way or the other of legislating such that over time, certain benefits will come to you. I think lawmakers must learn to think out of the box and do so circumspectly and in tandem with the time or the juncture of action.
Just to take you back on what you said about the economic strain it's going to be on the state, it's estimated that 20 million naira monthly will go to this, and the expenses for the state taxpayer is going to increase as a result of this. What is the implication for the states? If you take a look at the fact that you both have agreed that that state seems almost impoverished.
Like I mentioned, you need to look at the economy as a continuum. Even if you have access to that pension, can it sustain you in the next 5 years if we don't improve our economy? I use the minimum wage as an example. The minimum wage was increased to 18,000 naira in 2011. As at that time, I think the dollar rate was 162 naira to a dollar. So if you converted that 18,000 naira, you got $111. Now, in 2019, that has been increased to 30,000 naira, and we are yet to start paying. The exchange rate is 360 naira. If you convert this 30,000 naira on the scale of what we have now, is just about $83. So are we making progress or regressing? So we need to identify what are the basic needs of a society. You talk about healthcare, education for children, you talk about housing, you talk about security, you talk about comfort. For example, in the United States of America, you don't bother yourself about buying generator, buying fuel. We have 24/7 power supply there. In the UK, where our president is currently having his private vacation, you see, life is functional. You see, they are not distressed. And that is why it was easy for the former Prime Minister of the UK, Cameron, to resign from office as Prime Minister when his position on Brexit did not fly. So you find very little difference between office and outside of office. Let's come back to Nigeria. I was with a senator and we were discussing on trying to evaluate his performance and things like that. And surprisingly, he was escorted to that event by 8 mobile policemen. How can he sustain that out of office? And there are other implications we have not considered. If I know, for instance, as a politician, that all I need to do is go into the House of Assembly and be there for 2 years, and I have access to this life pension, my sister, my brother, I will be as desperate as desperation. And we are already complaining about how desperate our politicians are. So why don't we think inside the box and get outside the box and fix outside the box, that there won't be a difference? You know,
how would we do that if we take into consideration the fact that there's been calls for lawmaking not to be a full-time job, like you hold on to some other job and then you still do that on the part-time, so that the burden on the government is not so much, and that the amount that is being paid should be cut down as well? What do you make of that argument?
Is the government of Nigeria not provided for? Look at the enormous resources we have. Today, as at March 2019, the unemployment rate in the United States of America stood at about 3.8%. So you can know the impact of that on the economy. I don't want to ask you what the unemployment rate is in Nigeria. Can we have a situation in this country where these legislators, the ministers, the obas, the obis, the emirs, the preachers, you know, all come together and engage the government that, please, can you give us electricity to start the industrial process of this country?
That is one way. What about this?
It is the essence of governance.
The idea, because what it looks like now is once you're a public servant, once you hold a political office, it is expected that you are made for life. You're not expected to come back and join the poor
You know why
masses.
we have that? Yeah. We have a dependent economy, not an independent economy. I will explain that. Okay. An economy in which you have an uncle who is a senator and he takes care of the whole community. It's a wrong economy. You empower people. An economy where in a whole town there will be 3 rich men who feed the other poor ones, and he orders them around. It's a terrible economy.
Okay.
You see, so they are. You see, the Constitution of Nigeria says that the primary purpose of government is to, you know, protect the people and to provide. Yes. Talking about welfare, have we addressed those, you know, concrete obligations?
Okay, just hold on to your thought. Let's hear what Kunu has to say about this.
As far as I'm concerned, I think we have to look at the mirror and see ourselves very clearly, because we appear to have covered the mirror with a cloth, so we don't get to see the proper reflection of who we are. First, as pockets of leaders, and of course as followers, and of course as political leaders. I tell you one thing, if the various faiths we have in this country could wake up from their slumber and speak as one, civil society organizations will speak as one, pressure groups which are practically dead can come together and speak as one, and insist that certain things be gotten right, I can tell you for free that would have been out of this quagmire a long time ago. So whilst the Christians are speaking with some form of sentiments regarding national issues, and the Muslims, on the other hand, when it comes to their turn, are also speaking in favor of anything they do, and civil society groups go to sleep until after 4 years when election comes, and pressure groups are just lobbying at the back to become special assistants to those in power, then we are all a bunch of jokers. As a matter of fact, we have become clowns, and we can never be useful oftentimes when we are shuffling the cards. Our lives have become cards that they don't take as important. So they hold the aces, they shuffle, permanently they have the aces. And once the aces are in your hands, it becomes difficult for anybody to outwit you. I need to say this very clearly. We are really joking, but we are joking sitting on a keg of, improvised explosive device. There's a new population figures out today.
Yes.
We are in excess, unarguably in excess of 200 million. And between the ages of 0 and 14 years, that's 88 million. Now that's the active period, transiting from that juncture to when people become youth and their lives become meaningful. I can tell you for free that well over 50 million of those, because oftentimes we don't document our realities. Those persons have either not had any education or they have had, poor education. Now, when you have people within that demographics not empowered by gaining knowledge that can make them, first of all, be useful to themselves, it's going to produce people who occupy position and make even worse legislation than we are discussing
Well, the
today.
civil society organizations are saying that they're going on the streets to protest about this. We've been hearing that. And then we've also heard Sarah come up writing an open letter.
They are always 10 steps behind. Let me tell you, civil society organizations in Nigeria have branches across the states of the Federation. And they have to be strategic. Being strategic means don't be disconnected to the people. Let me tell you this. Do you know that last year it got to a stage, the Chief of Army Staff, Borutai, and some other Army Supremos were saying that some so-called NGOs were operating up north without proper registration, and what they were doing was completely counterproductive. By implication, civil society organizations have devised some kind of ways to make money representing as what? Those taking care of internally displaced persons. I bring that back to this discussion. Oftentimes, civil society groups are so far from the people because civil society groups cannot always move with weight enough to influence policies if you don't connect with the people. So oftentimes we see people that call themselves representatives of civil society groups on the one hand, and they're not able to connect with the masses. So we don't have that force that is necessary to make people do what should be done. For instance, in Sudan, the reason why it's a huge success is that the opposition party connected with the masses, they become formidable and they are completely demanding what they should demand. In Algeria, it is one and same. So when you are talking about civil society group, they are always 10 steps behind because their impact would have been such that the average citizen, because civil society groups don't even understand that they have a role of repeated sensitization of the people regarding their role so that there will be synergy.
But there seem to be so many issues at the same time to be tackled. Today we're talking about one thing. Tomorrow the politicians bring something else that they're tackling. You're not done with this one and something else comes up. Last week we were talking about something different. We're talking about police and the guns and what they do with it. The week before that, we're talking about, so how can they coordinate in the midst of so much cacophony going on?
There are quite a number of societies that grapple with different challenges. In fact, for every problem you solve, the solution comes with more problems. It's just that some countries are dealing with advanced problems. And now, how can we solve that? We suggested, and like Mr. Kunu said, we have about 91 political parties in Nigeria, and they only come out once in about, just to go around and make noise. And why don't you regroup? Let's assume we break the 91 parties into about 20 cells, for instance, and you begin to engage issues. The United Nations has simplified the vision for some years to come through the Sustainable Development Goals that has about 17 goals that are common to all nations. Prosperity speaks all languages. The same way poverty speaks all languages.
It's universal language.
If you open yourself up. So why don't we have that? Problems are part of societies. Let's come to where we are. We have been rated as the capital of poverty, and from all indications, we can hardly contest that. Let's now go outside of the country and see some countries that share the same apparel with us. go to Asia, there are about 48 countries. The two poorest countries in Asia are Afghanistan and Yemen. And we share the same denomination.
But let me add quickly, not to interject you, that the minimum wage of Afghanistan is more than a minimum wage. I'm very sorry.
Despite
but I need to rub that in so that just to concretize what is described, the two poor, even the Yemen we are talking about, until the war that ravaged them, Yemen was a place that you had some people who dreamed to go to.
Okay, let's focus this conversation.
They have no business being poor.
Yes.
But they have terrorism, which we also have here.
Okay, because we have limited time, let's narrow this conversation back to the Bayelsa situation. Now, we have a pending bill. Serap has come up to say, please don't sign this bill. TUC has come up and say, please don't sign this bill. The APC faction in the state, chapter in the state, stakeholders have come up to say, don't sign this bill. So it is your opinion. Let me start with you as a legal person. Is it your opinion that Dixon should listen to the people and not sign this bill?
Let me approach it from the public relations angle. The 1978 Mexican statement about public relations says is the art and social science of monitoring trends, predicting their consequences, and suggesting programs that can be implemented to,
Well, he's been really silent.
So right now, if you look out of the window and see what is happening in Sudan, Algeria, Nigeria may not be an exception. You see, what happens when people are oppressed is that you compel them to rise up against you. And that is why many of us are fanatical about the national development advocacy, because whether you like it or not, people begin to see you as who you are. Your selfishness comes to the open because the gap is so wide.
Absolutely.
We are talking of senseless prosperity in the midst of absolute poverty. Definitely one has to bow to the other. And when the battles get to the playing field, poverty is more violent than prosperity, because the prosperous man has so much to protect. The poor man has nothing to protect. So I want to advise the government, please, can you go back and study democracy? Democracy says the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The moment you don't connect with the people at the point of securing them and providing for them and creating an environment, you endanger your relevance, and they can rise up against you. So we are asking them to sit back and check their consciences and see the alternative way out. A secure society for all is better than a secure society for a few, because the insecurity of the larger spectrum of society will swallow your insecurity, if not today, tomorrow. Really, and that's why we are asking that please, let's have widespread success. I think we are more secure that way. And it is possible in this country. Nigeria is a country I described as being overblessed. We are talking about power situation. We have the largest reserve of proven gas in Africa. And I think the 9th largest in the whole world. So what are we talking about?
And we've not explored one seventh of that.
It's really.
So you seem to agree with him, but
it's about see, what is wrong cannot be painted as right. Government essentially is about those who...
Sorry, just as you're going to respond to that, could you add consider the fact also that the National Assembly just approved the severance package for lawmakers, and that's estimated to be the 15% of our annual budget?
Well, let me tell you this. The National Assembly has always been a group of persons who find a way to do what should benefit them. And I'm going to tell you this. You'll be amazed at the speed with which that particular money will be approved by them. The speed at which they will ensure that such money even gets into their bank accounts. Don't forget that about half of that 8th Assembly will not be returning. And the initiative must have actually been mooted by people who feel this is how our political careers will end. And from the scheme of things, they may go into political oblivion. So they are looking for a way to get certain amounts of flesh in its pound weight before they exit office, so that at least while they are wallowing in their tears of not getting the mandate to return, at least they've taken their pinch off the Nigerian people and they're enjoying it elsewhere. So I need to say this basically. The responsibility is heavily on the shoulders of Nigerians because number one, they say, from where I come from, they say if you do not, have lunch of yam because of the oil, you definitely will, dip your hand in the oil because of the yam. So it's either way. By implication, the Nigerian people must not look at governance as, okay, we're going to wait for them, we'll continue to cry. And the forces of good are still more in this country than the forces of evil. Because during election, people will tell you, especially the elites, that they don't want trouble. They are the ones who wouldn't come out to vote. They are the ones who wouldn't advocate because they are able to at least provide 3 square miles and drive in a car or two, provide their own electricity. People don't even understand that you could have a fence as high as 10, 12 feet and people still come in and take your peace from you. Until we begin to see the bigger picture of the risk that our lives gradually move close to because of the things we refuse to do, we'll rise up in unison and ensure that the forces of evil in governance, on the streets, anywhere, are dominated and gotten completely rid of. It is a possibility. The advanced countries most of us are willing to take our dead bodies to when we leave Nigeria at the point of death have evolved. And at times people will say, for about 200 years or so, which of course has to do with the American independence, people say America is over 200 years. I tell them, keep quiet. When people make mistakes and they document the errors they make, it is for you to look at the errors and avoid the pitfalls. So that gives you room to grow. At times they talk about the figures churned out by international bodies as incorrect. I tell them, if your country hasn't conducted census since 2006, which it should have done, and people deemed it fit to use certain projections to give you figures, why don't you leverage their research and solve your problems? Until we begin to address issues as they are and move away from this needless sentiment, as he said, we are closer to improvised explosive device in all respect than we ever imagined.
I think on that note, we'll just pause on this segment. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in.
Yes,
we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're still with us anyway, just thanking you for now.
All right, it's a pleasure.
All right, when we return, we'll be talking Kogi State and the allegations of 38 months unpaid salaries. Do stay with us.